Hey everybody, thank you very much for joining me for the video. So today, as per the title, we are talking about what it's like to game on a budget PC in 2021. The reason for this is that A, getting hold of a lot of new components right now is a real challenge, but also B, not everybody has endless amounts of money to be able to spend on their rig and their setup. Behind me, you see a PC that featured in a previous video, which is a PC that I built as a guest PC. So it's a used part, kind of all bundled together to create what you see behind me. Now, this particular one, all in for what you essentially see, so you've got the tower itself and all of the components, you've got the keyboard, the mouse, and you've got the screen here, excluding the mouse, sorry, the mouse wasn't included in the price, I just had a spare one kind of hanging around, but all in, it was £300. Now, we're talking older technology, so let's talk about specifications. So in this tower here, we've got an i5 6500, so 6th generation i5. It's a quad-core processor, perfectly fine for gaming, as you're going to see a little bit later on in the video. Graphics card, the next important thing, which is a Asus Strix GTX 970. So again, it's a 9th series or 900 series GTX card. So we're going, obviously we're on 3000 series at the moment. We're going back essentially, not one, not two, but 3 generations of cards. I think it was actually released in 2014. So at time of recording this video, it's almost 7 years old as a card. But I want to show people that even if you're operating on a really tight budget, gaming with a lot of popular games today is very much achievable. In addition to what I've talked about, we've got 16 gigabytes of RAM, we've got 2 SSDs, one is a boot drive and one is the storage drive for games. It is a limited drive, but it's only because it's a guest PC. You could obviously go bigger, or you could even go for a hard drive just to get more storage per buck, but there's an SSD in this specific one. Behind me there's a 22-inch panel, and that 22-inch panel is 1080p and it's 60 FPS. So that obviously has a bit of an influence over what sort of expectation we have in terms of quality. So essentially, as long as we're achieving 60 FPS, we are delivering what this display is capable of displaying. So I think that's quite an important factor. So what I want to do is just bring you guys in a bit closer and show you exactly what this machine is capable of. So let's do that. Okay, so here we are, all close up, ready to go, and kind of show you what it is that's going on here. I'm not using any form of screen recording software. This is intentional because I don't want to reduce the capabilities of the computer. What I want to do first is actually run some benchmarks. So let's get one loaded up right now. So the first benchmark we're going with is something called Nova Bench. My reason for using this is it's a very light benchmark that gives you a good understanding of what it is that you're achieving. So let's start this test. So this is just as an overall test. It looks at your memory speed, it looks at your processor, it looks at your GPU, it looks at your storage device, and just runs through a real simple process of giving you a benchmark score for that. Okay, so that gives us an understanding. So we've got a Nova Bench score here of 1825. Now this won't mean a lot to many people, but the great thing about Nova Bench is if you're doing an upgrade, if you're adding in an additional piece of hardware or whatever it might be, it's great to do a previous and post-upgrade result. Right, okay, next up, let's do a Cinebench run. So you'll know that Cinebench is a great way of identifying the single core and multi-core power of a processor. So we've got an i5 6500 in here, like I mentioned before. So it's a 6th generation i5. So it's showing its age, shall we say, but it's perfectly capable. So let's get open Cinebench. We're using R23, which is the latest build. And what I'll actually do is if I just open up Task Manager as well, we can also see what we're boosting to in terms of CPU. Okay, let's pop that over there. And we will just go into our preferences and we will run a single test as opposed to just leaving it spinning. So there we go. Let's do a multi-core test first. Let's go. So just as the test is loading there, you can see at the moment our utilization in terms of CPU is going to start flying up. We're up to 100%. We're boosting to 3.3 gigahertz on our 4 cores. It's 4 logical processors as well. This doesn't have hyperthreading. So that's boosting about 0.1 above base clock. Okay, so the multi-core test is complete and we've scored 3,412, which is comparable apparently to 11th gen i7 1165G7, which is a laptop processor. But I think actually what we really want to see is the single core performance. Ultimately, for gaming, that's where the real win is. Now, understand this is a 6th generation processor. I'm not expecting this to be anywhere near the top of the leaderboard, but I just want to show you what it is actually capable of. So let's do that single core process. This does take a while. I am going to cut because I'm not naive to the fact that this is an old processor, and we know that single core takes a while. But let's get the test started. Let's see what we're boosting up to once it goes under that single core utilization. Here we go. So that's starting to go into its render process now. You can see now our boost is kind of dipping between kind of 3.5 to 3.56, 57 with 30% utilization using that single core. So yeah, getting that extra bit of boost on that single core process. On the multi-core that we were looking at before, we were pinned at 3.3. It didn't go up, it didn't go down. That was that. So let's leave this to run and see what sort of results we get. Okay, so single core has come to the end there at 927. These are only designed as reference points for you to see what sort of scores you can expect from this system, and then also to see how it compares to whatever budget system you build and whether or not you're getting the performance that we're going to see in some of the games we're going to look at. I want to run just one more benchmark, which is a fairly popular one. So let's just get this one closed down. In terms of boost, throughout that whole process, the boost kind of stuck around 3.56 for the single core. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to load up Steam and we're going to jump into one more benchmark that gives us kind of an overview of the system again and gives you a comparison point for anything that you build. Typically, it's just going to have to do a quick Steam update. Now, this is from 3D Mark and it's 3D Mark Time Spy, so I'm sure you've heard of it before. What we'll do, like I said, is once we're into Steam, we'll get that all loaded up and ready to go. Okay, so we're in. You can see the system's picked up here with Windows 10, 64-bit, 16 gigabytes of RAM with 343 gigabytes of storage. Processor is an Intel Core i5-6500 with a base clock of 3.2 gigahertz, and graphics is an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 970. Let's get this test run. Again, I'm going to skip through the test to give you the results at the end. Let's hit this run button and make it happen. Okay, so we're back. We had a total score there of 3,515. That broke down as a graphics score of 3,559 and a CPU score of 3,289. Doesn't really mean a huge amount to most people, but essentially this gives you some 3 reference points. We've run 3 different benchmarks. So if you're building your own system, these 3 numbers, if you're achieving these in benchmarks, you should see similar results to what we're going to see in the games coming now. 3D Mark, one other great thing they've got in the middle is estimated game performance, depending upon what game that you're selecting. But that isn't what we're going to be using here. We are going to jump into just 3 games, 3 fairly common games, 2 of which, if you're buying a computer like this, you may well be looking at because they're kind of esport titles. And then one that's kind of more demanding on the system and slightly less optimized, so we can really kind of push the hardware here. Anyway, let's get into that. So there is our 3D Mark Time Spy score, 3515. Okay, the first one that we're going to do is probably an obvious one. We're going to jump into Rocket League. Now, the reason we're going to go with Rocket League is that it is not a massively power-hungry game, but it is a very popular game, especially when recently Epic Games Launcher has started to offer it for free. so we are likely to see more and more people jumping back on that bandwagon. So we're going to load into the launcher here and get that game loaded up. Luckily I already pre-installed it on here so that it's ready to go. So let's launch into this. So you're going to notice straight away I am using a keyboard and mouse, which isn't always recommended. With Rocket League, but it's kind of not really what it's about. I'm just trying to see what its in-game performance looks like. What we'll do before we actually jump into a game is we will just get through this demo screen, and then we'll look at some settings, so on and so forth, and see what they come out to be like. Right, okay, so our video settings, we've got it set on 920 by 1080, ready for the screen. Max FPS, I'm actually going to set that as high as possible. I know we've got 60 FPS on the screen available, or 60 Hertz should I say, but I want to max it out to see what it's actually giving. I'm going to turn off motion blur because it sucks. And you can see automatically it's set texture detail to high quality, wool detail to high quality, and particle detail to high quality, with every single setting ticked straight out of the gate. So anyway, let's go back, resume into a game, and see what we're getting. So what you're going to see, if you can see in the bottom right hand corner, we have got, it's kind of darting between kind of 190 all the way up to 240 FPS. On this 1080 resolution with everything kind of to the max, and there we go. I managed to score. That was a miracle. Okay, so yeah, like I said, we're averaging anywhere from 190 up to about 240 FPS with everything maxed out, 1080p graphics. Yeah, I think you can argue more than happily that this is perfectly playable quality. And yeah, I'm now doing awful with a keyboard and mouse. Don't play Rocket League with a keyboard and mouse. Okay, here we go. Cool, I think we've got another one. We have. So that was Rocket League. We averaged 190 to 240 FPS with 1080p and everything maxed out. So it's an esports title, it's not that power hungry, but it's a popular game. Again, we're gaming here on 6-7-year-old hardware, getting way above what this screen is capable of, and a perfectly good gaming experience in Rocket League. Okay, next up, we're going to jump into Fortnite. This isn't a game that I play, anymore at least. But I know it's still exceptionally popular, and another title that it's likely to see that people will be jumping on when they build a system like this. So let's get this loaded up and let's see what it looks like gaming on this 6-7-year-old hardware. Okay, so now we've launched into the game, one thing that Fortnite does is it automatically finds the right settings to suit your system, or what they think is the right setting. So let's jump in and see what it's done. Okay, so it's auto set, obviously, again, 1920 by 1080, and it's auto set quality presets to epic. So yeah, 3D resolution 100%, everything is set to epic. Motion blur is turned off, that's good news. Yeah, that's impressive. So yeah, straight on up, it thinks we can run on full epic settings. Let's see how realistic that is. So let's jump in. We will just jump straight into a creative map. Actually, no, let's jump into a solo and get put straight down onto the island. So here we go. Let's load in. Okay, so here we are. We're on the island, ready to be spawned in through the bus, I believe. I think that's kind of how it works. Obviously, we have to wait for other players to join us, but we are looking at fairly up and down FPS, but on average, I think we're staying, other than the odd ping spike where people are loading in, we are staying around kind of 55 to 65 FPS. Okay, we're in the bus. Let's get ready to drop down. It's been a long time since I've played Fortnite. I couldn't tell you where anything is on the island, but we'll give it a go. So we're on our way out. Okay, so as we parachute down, we are seeing, again, a few fluctuations in FPS, but kind of 55 to 65, peaks over 70. Let's try and land down here. Now, bear in mind that the game has automatically set this to absolutely epic high-end graphic detail settings. Yes, it's Fortnite, it's not that demanding, so it isn't the biggest surprise in the world that this has loaded those settings, but something I would say is that if you aren't comfortable with the FPS and you permanently want to stay over that 60 FPS, you could adjust those settings. I mean, look, we know we're getting 60 over 60 now, but you could adjust those settings to get that more consistent run. Let's drop in down onto this house, see if I have absolutely any idea what I'm doing. Okay, here we go. Yeah, we're like 80 FPS now. Now we've landed. Let's see how this works. Okay, so I just picked loads of stuff up. No idea what all this means. I believe that's a shotgun. And we've got some kinds of grenades. There we go, 70 FPS as we're running along on the grounds. Again, this is with epic detail on 6-7-year-old hardware. Perfectly playable. I'm assuming that big ball or zorb in the sky there's probably something to do with the launch of the next season. That's normally what they do, isn't it? Leave something with questions in the middle. Okay, yeah, all good. Am I supposed to be like chopping down trees and stuff and getting stone? I've no idea what I'm doing. Here we go, let's try chopping down this tree. Still staying in 60 FPS. Can you get that stone? Yeah, fair play. Cool. The thing is, as soon as I see another player, I'm just going to get killed. I mean, Salty Towers. I don't know why, but since I last played Fortnite, this seems a lot more kind of cartoony than it used to be. Ooh, we've got some water and some water reflections. So we're driving a car, didn't know you could do that in Fortnite, getting over 70 FPS, and apparently I'm in one of the top 50 players remaining, which isn't a huge surprise because I've not tried to fight anybody. Oh, let's run this person over. There we go. I placed 27. I think that's enough Fortnite for one day anyway. Okay, what we'll do is just quit out of this now. As I said, FPS appeared to stay around about 60 to 65, and that was with epic settings. So remember, if you wanted to, you could, by all means, you could reduce those from epic settings to just high, and then straight away you're going to see even more FPS. But actually, we were staying within the abilities of this monitor. So there you go, that's Fortnite. Again, staying above 60 FPS. Let's load up another game. Now this is the last game that we're going to load, which is a less refined game, and certainly very power intensive. The game we're going to load up is Rust. So for those who haven't heard of Rust, it's a survival game, it's a sandbox game. It's all about creating bunkers, creating structures, creating food, as well as crafting items to stay alive. The game resets every 30 days. The challenge is stay alive for 30 days. It's an exceptionally toxic game. There's a lot of players on there who are exceptionally violent and have no compassion whatsoever, but that's kind of what makes it fun. So let's load into it. It's by a developer called Face Punch. I'm sure you've heard of Rust. If you haven't, make sure you check it out. It's an absolutely incredible game. But let's get loaded in. Okay, so now we're loaded in, what we're going to look at is just the settings. So I'll be honest straight away, this isn't going to run completely flat out on this hardware. To be perfectly honest with you, you're going to need something like a 2080 Ti or a 3070 to really get this completely flat out and maxed out. Anyway, we are running graphics quality overall of level 3. And then we've also got shadow qualities at level 2, and you can see every setting here is kind of mid to high, and then there's certain things that aren't on at all. One of those important things that won't be on is motion blur, because again, we don't like motion blur. But other than that, we've got medium graphic settings on here, purely because of the fact, like I said, This is a graphically intensive game. It is a beautiful game, but it isn't optimized that well. So let's jump back in. So we're actually here in one of my bases. So let's jump out of here. Let's go this way so we can really see what is going on. Okay. So inside the base here, we are seeing between 90 and 100 FPS on this detail. But you see, as soon as we come outside, the reflections are fantastic, and we are seeing around about 80 to 90 FPS. So perfectly playable with medium settings. You could probably bump it a little more. The render distance is reduced. It's not got the highest render distance, but again, it is playable with a strong 80, 90 FPS in, like I said, a game that is power intensive and not that massively optimized. Let's have a bit of a run around and see if we see any dips below that 80 mark. So as I get to the top of this hill, we're still seeing over 80 FPS, but it's safe to say, we've dropped into the 70s, but it's safe to say that the graphics card is working hard. It is starting to ramp up. It's definitely starting to get some heat into it, but on the whole, this is working perfectly fine. So we headed back inside because it was going dark, but it's daytime again, so I thought I'd head back out. We've got a bit more going on. There's a couple of rain splatters coming down, but we're still seeing that 90 FPS. It's gone over into this building here. Yeah, all looks clean. Still kind of 70s, 80s. Okay, so there you have it. What we've done now, we've run 3 benchmarks to give you reference points of what sort of scores you can expect from a system like this. And then we've played 3 different games, 2 of which are exceptionally well known in terms of Rocket League and Fortnite. Games that are going to be quite popular, especially among young players. And we're seeing strong FPS results within both of those games. Even Fortnite, which its inbuilt system put everything flat out, it was still running at over 60 FPS. Obviously, like I said, you could reduce those a bit if you wanted to get a bit more. We then headed on over to Rust from Face Punch. Rust I absolutely love. I think it's a fantastic game, but it is slightly poorly optimized and it is very heavy on hardware. It's got fantastic graphical detail, amazing sunsets and reflections, even though it hasn't got ray tracing. It's absolutely incredible. But still, this kicked out over 70 FPS with medium settings, which still gave you a really good visual experience and, again, completely playable. So what was the point in this video? Why did I put this together? I wanted to make sure that everybody knew, regardless of what your budget is, you can build a viable gaming system. So when you're out there right now, really frustrated at the lack of availability for new hardware, the resale scalper prices that we're seeing, not just on the 30 series, but on things like 1650 Supers and 1660 Ti's and such. You know, it can be really disheartening, but actually, if you're picking up 6-7-year-old hardware like a GTX 970, an Intel Core i5 6500, it's still perfectly capable today in 2021. You can play an array of games on medium to even high settings and it will work perfectly fine with 60 FPS. Yet you're not going to do competitive gaming. You're not going to be jumping onto CSGO with 60 FPS and be as highly competitive as others out there, but it's perfectly playable. You know, you can play casual games, it'll work perfectly fine with no real challenges. I have run this on CSGO as well, and it comfortably gets over 150 FPS. You know, it's not a very demanding game, CSGO. The reason I bring in the 60 FPS, obviously this is what this monitor is limited to. But like I said, I think that there is an entry point into gaming for anybody, regardless of the fact that if you are on quite a slim budget. For console money, you are looking at a fully fledged gaming PC that gives you the experience of building a PC. It gives you an upgrade path. You can upgrade this system. It is further, it can go further. And not only that as well, it isn't just a gaming PC, it's a PC. You can do multiple other things on there. The rumour is true. Gaming PCs are not just for gaming. If you've got any questions at all about anything you've seen in this video, make sure you stick it in the comment section below. Thank you for sticking with me for the whole video. I know it's been a long video, but it was just really kind of showing what things that are out there are capable of doing, even on that slim budget. If you want to support the channel, head on over to thatrandomgeekyguy.com, pick up a Founder Edition t-shirt. It really supports the channel and I really appreciate it. Or if you want to just do a small gesture, hit that like button. It makes a big difference. We love the feedback. As I said, comments below. If you dislike it, you know what to do. Do that, whatever it might be. Please join me for our next video. Until then, take care.